On Thursday, May 28th, 2026, an Israeli airstrike hit a residential building in Shuifat, a town just south of Beirut. Three people were killed: a Lebanese mother, her 8-month-old baby daughter, and an elderly Syrian woman from the apartment next door. 15 others were wounded. The declared target was a senior Iran-linked militia commander. The casualties were not. This is the first time in 3 weeks Israeli jets have struck near the Lebanese capital. What we are about to tell you happened inside an ambulance between 10:41 and 10:53 that night. Before we begin, if testimonies like this one matter to you, subscribe to this channel. We are publishing 4 witnesses to this same building this week in 4 languages. The man you are about to hear is the first. He is 47 years old. He has worked for the Lebanese Red Cross for 19 years. His name is Tony Abu Khalil.
My name is Tony Abu Khalil. I am 47 years old. I live in Hadath, on the eastern edge of Beirut. I have a wife, Mireille, and 3 boys: Elias, 14, Charbel, 11, and Joe, the youngest, 7. I have worked for the Lebanese Red Cross for 19 years. I am the lead paramedic at the Hadath station. I am Maronite. I was born in Bikfaya, in the mountains above Jounieh, where the villagers speak a kind of Arabic the rest of the country teases us about. We swallow the ends of our words. We make every sentence sound like a question. I am telling you this because what I am about to describe is going to sound like something a boy from the mountains made up to scare his friends. I want you to know what kind of man is talking to you. By my own count, in 19 years, I have lifted 4,217 people off pavement, of rubble, of the floor. I have been first into 17 suicide bombings, 4 large explosions, including the port of Beirut in August of 2020, 2 collapsed buildings, and more car accidents than I can count. I am not the man who sees things. When people on this job tell me they have seen something, I nod politely and give them the number of a counselor. I do not believe them. Remember that when I tell you what happened the night of May 28th. It was the last hour of my shift. My partner that night was Naji, 31, Greek Orthodox from Ashrafie, drinks too much coffee. He had just poured me a cup from the yellow machine that has not worked properly in 11 months. I was 3 sips in when the call came. The dispatcher said, aerial strike, civilian building, Shuweifat, multiple casualties, Unit 14 respond. 22:37, 10:37 at night. The strike had happened 7 minutes earlier. We were in the ambulance in 3 minutes. I drove. The road from Hadath to Shuweifat is short, 9 minutes by light traffic. That night the traffic was light. People had heard the strike and were inside. We took the road up through the olive groves on the western slope. I have driven it 200 times. I know it like I know my own hallway in the dark. But about a kilometer out, the smell hit us. Concrete dust, burning insulation, something metallic. I knew it before we turned the last corner. Naji rolled up his window. We came around the curve at Hayel Knise and we saw it. The civil defense were already there. 4 trucks, headlights pointing into the open face of the building. The 5th floor of a 6-story residential block was gone. Not collapsed, gone. From the street you could see an oven and a piece of curtain still hanging. We parked behind the cordon. I got out. The first thing I noticed was the Druze family on the curb across the street, the mother holding her face. The second was a Maronite priest in a white cassock, kneeling on the sidewalk in front of the building, hands folded, eyes closed. Beside him, a Druze sheikh in the white turban and the long dark robe, also on his knees, also silent. I had never seen those 2 men kneeling next to each other. I had seen each of them many times. Father Antoun at Marcharbel Parish, Sheikh Walid at the Khalwa down the street. They drink tea on the steps between their 2 buildings every 2 months. They are friendly. They are not the kind of friends who kneel together. That night they were. I did not stop. I nodded to the civil defense captain. He pointed up. He said, 3rd floor, 2 children alive, mother dead, the unit was the target. I went in. The building was still alive. That is the only way I can say it. The lights on the third floor landing were flickering yellow and dark. Water was running down the stairwell wall from a broken pipe on the fifth floor that wasn't there anymore. Cables swung from the ceiling. The air was thick with concrete dust that had a sweetness in it. I went up the stairs two at a time. Naji was behind me with the bag. Third floor, the door of apartment 301 was open. I went in. I describe it now the way a paramedic sees, not the way a man with a heart sees. I had 19 years of training to keep me from being a man with a heart for the next 40 minutes. The kitchen was the room facing the explosion. The mother, Lebanese, mid-30s, dark hair cut short, was on the floor with her back against the dishwasher. The dishwasher was still humming. The mother was not. I checked her carotid. No pulse. Her name was Rana. I learned it from the building manager an hour later. She had been a graphic designer. She made book covers. I will not pretend I knew her. I went down the hallway. The lights were out on that side. About halfway down, I heard breathing. Small, fast, irregular. The kind of breathing an 8-month-old makes when something is wrong. I found her on the floor of the hallway, near the door of the bedroom. She had been thrown there by the blast. Her name was Aya. I would learn this name also from the building manager. She was 8 months old. Her body was intact. Her eyes were closed. She was breathing. I picked her up. She was warm. She was light. She was alive. I told Naji on the radio, 1 infant, alive, critical, prepping for transport. I came out of the apartment. I crossed the landing. The door of apartment 302, the apartment next door, was half open. I pushed it open with my elbow because my hands were holding the baby. I was about to call out. I did not need to. Inside, in the front room, an old woman lay on the floor by the kitchen. A headscarf in the Syrian village style, not moving. My arms were full with the baby, but I have lifted enough people to know. She was gone. A Syrian grandmother, I learned later. She had survived the war in her own country. She did not survive this. And standing over her, in the doorway between the front room and the hall, there was a small girl. She was 6 years old. She was wearing a striped t-shirt that had been gray and was now white from the concrete dust. Her hair was white. Her eyebrows were white. Her face was a streaked map of white dust and tear lines and dried blood from a cut on her temple. She was not crying. She was not making a sound. She was standing there on her bare feet, looking up at me with her eyes wide open, and behind her eyes there was the silence of a person who had been awake for a very long time. I said in Arabic, "Come with me, my love." She did not move. I held out my hand. She did not take it. I tucked the baby against my chest with my left arm, and I crouched down to her level. I said again, softer, "Come, my love, come." She looked past me. She looked over my shoulder, up into the corner where the wall of the landing met the ceiling. I looked too. There was nothing there. There was a broken light fixture and a strip of wallpaper hanging down, and a thin line of cobweb older than the war. There was nothing else. I looked back at the girl. She was still looking at the corner. Her expression had not changed. I picked her up with my right arm, the baby on my left, the girl on my right. She did not resist. She did not soften either. She let herself be carried like a thing that was being carried. I came down the stairs. Naji had set up the stretcher in the stairwell on the second floor landing. We laid the baby on it. He started intubating her. I carried the girl out into the street. When I came out into the street, I noticed something. The priest and the sheikh were no longer side by side on the sidewalk. The priest had moved. He was standing closer to the building. He was looking up at the third floor. The sheikh was still on his knees, but his eyes were open now, and he too was looking up at the third floor. Both of them were looking at the same spot. The spot was the window of apartment 301, the apartment I had just come out of. I did not have time to look. I carried the girl past them. I put her in the ambulance. Naji came running with the stretcher of the baby. We loaded her in. I shut the back doors. I climbed in the back with both of them. Naji ran around to the driver's seat. I told Naji, AUBMC Hamra. Naji said, yes. We pulled out. The time was 22:41. I want to tell you now what happened in the back of that ambulance between 22:41 and 22:53 when we arrived at the emergency entrance of the American University of Beirut Medical Center. The back of an ambulance when you are working on a patient is the loudest small room in the world. The engine, the siren, the radio, the monitor, your own breathing, and the patient's. None of it is silent. The smallest noise, a buckle clicking, sounds like a slap. I had the baby on stretcher 1, on my left as I knelt between them. I had the girl, Mariam, on stretcher 2, on my right. I learned her name this morning from her mother. The baby was named Aya. The girl was named Mariam. I will use their names now, even though I did not know them then. Aya stopped breathing at approximately 22:45. The monitor flatlined. I started CPR. 2 fingers on her sternum. The compressions are different on an infant. Gentle, fast, with the rhythm of a song you do not want anyone to hear you humming. And I was humming. I was kneeling on the steel floor. It was wet, sweat, and some blood from the girl's temple where the cut had reopened. Naji was driving. The cabin moved with every turn, and my body with it, because my hands could not let go of the baby. I want to say clearly, what I tell you next, I saw with my eyes. I was conscious, not in shock, not struck, not unconscious. I had a baby under my hands and a girl on my right. I was awake, and I was not praying. I had not prayed in 11 years, not since the port. I have not been inside a church since August of 2020. I do not pray. I tell you this so you know I was not asking for anything when this happened. I felt something change in the cabin. I do not know how else to say it. The cabin got quiet. The siren did not stop. The engine did not stop. Naji's hands did not stop on the wheel. But the cabin got quiet anyway. The way a room gets quiet when someone you have been arguing with stops arguing and just looks at you. I looked up. There was a man standing in the cabin between the 2 stretchers. He was standing with his feet on the steel floor that I was kneeling on. The cabin of our ambulance is 1.80 meters wide. The man was standing in the center. He was about my height. He was wearing a long white tunic that went down to his ankles. The cloth was simple. There was no embroidery. There was no gold. It was the white of a shroud and of a wedding shirt and of a fresh bandage all at once. He was barefoot. I noticed this because the steel floor of the ambulance was sticky with blood and sweat and disinfectant and concrete dust, and his feet were on it, and the soles of his feet were clean. I am a paramedic. I notice feet on floors. His feet were the feet of a man who had walked many roads. There was history in them. But on that floor, at that moment, they were clean. His hair was dark and curled at the shoulders, the way the hair of men in the interior of Lebanon falls when it has not been cut for a few months. His beard was short. The features of his face were the features of the men I grew up around in Big Faya. There was on his face the face of my maternal grandfather, who died in 2001. He was a man of my own people. His left hand was resting on the head of the baby. His right hand was resting on the head of the girl. Both hands. I noticed his wrists. There were marks on both wrists, around where the bones of the wrist meet the forearm. Old scars, pale, the kind of scar that does not go away. I noticed them because his hands were on the children and his sleeves had fallen back a little. I looked up at his eyes. His eyes were looking at me. I do not know how to describe his eyes to you. I've been trying since last night. The closest I can come is this. The light in his eyes was coming out, not going in. Most eyes reflect the light around them. Yours do. Mine do. His eyes were the light. The light came from inside the eye and moved outward. I want to be clear. It was not a glow. He was not glowing. He was standing in front of me like a man, like a real man, like a man you could touch. But the eyes were giving off light the way a fire gives off heat. Soft, steady, without warning. He spoke. He said, Tony, ana ma'ahum. In English, Tony, I am with them. He said it in Lebanese Arabic, not classical Arabic, not the Arabic of a sermon or a Quran or a prayer book, the Arabic of the village, the Arabic of Big Fire, the Arabic my grandfather spoke, the vowels swallowed at the ends, the qaf pronounced as a hamza, the way only people from certain pockets of the mountain pronounce it, the accent that the rest of the country teases us about. It was the way my mother used to call me to dinner. I stopped doing CPR. I did not decide to. My hands stopped. I heard Naji shout from the front, Tony, what are you doing? Keep going. I did not turn. My hands had stopped, but I did not turn. The man, he was looking at me. He was not in a hurry. He was not annoyed that I had stopped. He was looking at me the way a brother who has been gone for many years looks at you when he comes back. He spoke again. He said, Elias biestannak. In English, Elias is waiting for you. Elias is the name of my oldest son. He is 14. He plays football for the school in Hadath. He has not slept well for 2 years because of nightmares about the port. I have never told anyone at work that his name is Elias. I have not told Naji. I do not talk about my children at work. The names of my children do not exist in the cab of that ambulance. They do not exist on the radio. They do not exist in any file at the Red Cross. They live with me in the apartment in Hadath, and they live in my chest, and they do not come to work. He said, Elias biestannak. Elias is waiting for you. I felt my chest break. I did not cry. I did not move. I was kneeling on the steel floor with my hands floating an inch above Aya's chest, and I felt my chest break. The way a piece of dry wood breaks when you put it on the fire. Just a clean snap, deep inside. He looked down at the baby. He did not stop looking at me. He looked down at her and looked back up at me at the same time, the way only certain people can. He touched the top of her head with his index finger, just the top of her head, the crown, the soft spot that closes by the second year. He touched it like he was placing a seal. He looked back up at me. He smiled. It was the smile of someone who is about to leave a room and does not need to explain. He was gone. I want to be very precise. He did not fade. He did not flash. He did not dissolve. He was there, and then he was not there. And the space between those two moments did not have a duration. I started CPR again. My hands found her chest. I went back to the rhythm. I started humming again the song I had been humming. It was, I realized later, the song my mother used to sing when she rocked my younger sister to sleep in 1991 during the last months of the war. Aya stopped breathing the second time at approximately 22, 46, and 40 seconds. Her body went still under my hands. I did not stop. I kept going. I worked on her for the 7 minutes between then and 22:53, when we arrived at a UBMC. I did not stop. The doctors took her from me at the door. They worked on her for 11 more minutes. They pronounced her dead at 23:11. Mariam was awake and silent on the second stretcher. She had not moved during any of this. The doctors took her as well. She was admitted to pediatrics. They cleaned the cut on her temple. They could find no other injuries. They asked her name and her age and where her parents were. She did not answer. I went into the bathroom on the second floor and washed my hands 3 times. The dust came off the second time. The blood came off the third. I looked into the mirror. There was a man in the Red Cross uniform. I did not recognize him. He was just a man who had been spoken to by someone who knew the name of his son. I did not go back to dispatch. I did not sign the night report. Naji signed it alone. I have never not signed a night report in 19 years. I left. I drove home in my own car. The seatbelt rattled against the door the whole way. I did not turn on the radio. I parked in front of the building. I went upstairs. It was 3 in the morning. When I opened the door, the apartment was dark except for the light of the television in the living room. Elias was awake. He was sitting on the carpet in front of the television, playing a football game on the PlayStation. His back was to me. He was wearing his school t-shirt and a pair of pyjama bottoms. The volume was very low. I said, "Elias, why are you not in bed?" He turned. He looked at me. He took the controller off his lap and put it on the floor. He said, "Baba, you look like you've seen something." I sat down on the carpet. I did not sit on the couch. I sat next to him on the carpet. I did not answer him. He looked at me for a long time. He turned off the television. He moved closer to me. He put his shoulder against my shoulder. He is 14. He has not put his shoulder against my shoulder in maybe 3 years. I drank a glass of water. I went to bed. I lay down next to Mireille. She was asleep. I did not wake her. I lay on my back and I looked at the ceiling. I did not sleep that night. I did not sleep the next night. I have not slept properly since. I am not on shift today. The director called Naji to ask if anything had happened. Naji said, "There was a baby. Tony took it hard." That was all Naji said. Naji is a good partner. I drove to Junior at first light this morning. I sat on the rocks below the highway, where the bay opens out. I watched the boats. I did not pray. I did not think. I held my phone in my hand. I called no one. This morning I received a message from a nurse in pediatrics at the AUBMC. She had recognized me from the Red Cross uniform. She wrote, "The girl from Shueifat is talking. Her mother is here. They found each other this morning. The mother was pulled from the rubble and brought to the same hospital. The girl has spoken her first sentence. She thought you should know." I called her. I asked, "What did he say?" She said, "She was talking about you, Tony. She was telling her mother about the night." She said, and I am translating because she said it in Aleppine Arabic, because her family is from Yabrud. She said, "الرجل الأبيض لازم جا بيني وبين البنت الكبير من السيارة الأحمر." The white man, the necessary one, came between me and the big lady from the red car. I said, "The big lady?" The nurse said, "Yes." She said it twice. The big lady from the red car. We thought maybe her mother had a friend with a red car. But her mother, her name is Amal, knows no such friend. Amal asked her, "What red car?" And the girl said, "The one with the lights, the one Tony was driving." She said, she told her mother, Tony was the big lady. To a 6-year-old Syrian girl in the dark, in the dust, in the back of an ambulance, with her hair white from concrete, I must have looked like a large woman in a red car with lights. The uniform is loose. I am a big man. I said, "What about the white man?" She said, "That is what she keeps saying. الرجل الأبيض لازم." The white man, the necessary one, the one who had to come. Jabaini ubain. He came between me and Tony, standing between the two stretchers. I said thank you. I hung up. I sat down on the rocks. I cried for the first time in 6 years. The last time I had cried was when my mother died of cancer. I did not cry at the port. I did not cry at the wars. I did not cry at any of the 4,217 lifts. I cried because a 6-year-old Syrian girl I had carried out of a building the night before had seen the same man I had seen, and had been 6 years old and had known what to call him, the necessary one. I went home. I did not tell Mireille. I sat at the kitchen table. I opened my laptop. I went to Google. I wrote in Arabic because I needed to read it in the language he spoke to me in. I wrote, the verse about the children and the angels, the verse in the Gospels about children. The third result was Matthew 18 verse 10. In Lebanese Arabic, the Van Dyck translation. It said, "See that you do not despise any of these little ones, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father who is in heaven." I read it 3 times. I closed the laptop. I have read it many more times since. I have not been to church. I have not called a priest. I have not told the priest at Mar Charbel, even though I see him at the bakery on Friday mornings. I do not feel a need to. I have not gone back to a church. I want to be careful here. I am not telling anyone to leave their church. If your church is your home, stay. I do not want to be the man who takes things away from people. But I want to tell you, the people listening to me, what is true for me. I do not need a building. I do not need a priest. He came to me inside an ambulance, with his bare feet on a floor full of blood. He spoke to me in the Arabic of my mountain village. He knew the name of my son. He told me he was with the baby. The baby did die. But Mariam saw him too, and Mariam is alive. I do not need a building for that. In the morning, I make a cup of coffee. I lean against the counter. I do not light a candle. I do not open a book. I say, in my head, the only sentence I have figured out how to say to him. I say, Ana haun, I am here. The way he said, Ana ma'ahum, I am with them. That is my prayer. That is all of it. This morning, my wife Mireille noticed something. She did not ask. She handed me a coffee at the table and her hand stayed on the cup a second longer. She said, "You are different." I said, "Yes." She said, "In a good way." I said, "I think so." She said, "Okay." She let go of the cup. Elias asked me before he left for school an hour ago if I had seen something last night. I told him yes. He asked me if it scared me. I said no. I said it was the first time in 20 years I was not afraid. That is the whole thing. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Mariam. Thank you to her mother, Amal, who was pulled from the rubble of the same building and lived. Thank you to Naji, who drove and did not stop driving. And thank you to the baby, whose name I did not know that night, whose name I will say now, with you, while I can say it. Aya. Aya.
You just heard Tony Abu Khalil. Aya, the 8-month-old baby, will be buried tomorrow outside Hadath. Miriam, the 6-year-old Syrian girl Tony carried out, is alive, reunited this morning with her mother Amal, who survived buried under her own bed next door. Miriam still does not speak of that night, except one phrase about the white man who came between her and the woman in the red car. Tony has not returned to Mar Sharbal parish. He has not called a priest. He prays alone, leaning against his kitchen counter, every morning, in 3 words. One last thing. For those of you who, like Tony, have stopped going to a building, a friend of this channel wrote a short book for you. It is called Be Your Own Pastor. It is a 3-protocol guide for those who want to follow God without needing an institution between them and Him. The link is in the description. Read it tonight. 3 more witnesses from this same building are coming this week. Subscribe so you do not miss them.